The title of this paper is Can Understanding Phenomenology and Human Capabilities Help Us Address Acid Violence? Aisha Siddika and I are co-authors of this paper. Aisha completed her MA at Western University under my supervision. She has also worked previously for the Acid Survivors Foundation. I am a professor at the Department of Women's Studies and Feminist Research at Western University, where I also hold the Canada Research Chair in Global Women's Issues. So a spate of acid attacks, totaling more than about 100 in 2017 alone, has earned the City of London the dubious recent distinction of being called the acid capital of the UK. At least one acid attack per day is being reported in London, and there are suggestions that the actual number of attacks is actually much higher. There's a common misperception that acid attacks take place only in so-called developing countries, when they are in fact a worldwide phenomenon. Acid attacks have been reported in the UK, in Canada, in Italy, where there were at least 27 registered assaults in the year 2016, and other industrialized countries. Approximately 1,500 acid attacks are recorded worldwide annually. Now, in the recent cases in the UK, more than 2/3 of the victims are men, but globally, 80% of acid attack victims are women and girls. And acid violence is categorized as a form of gender-based violence because gendered roles and hierarchies within families and society not only motivate perpetrators to commit the crime, but also provide them with a sense of impunity. Perpetrators usually intend to disfigure rather than kill their victims. Now, perpetrators of acid violence are almost always men. About 98% tend to be men. And we agree with other authors who've written on this topic that cultural imperatives such as patriarchal views towards women seem to interact with personal level imperatives such as a potential perpetrator's education level to determine the likelihood of acid violence. So although acid violence is a global phenomenon, its prevalence is highest in Asia in general, and in particular in South Asia, with some countries reporting more than 100 incidents every year. In order to write this article, we reviewed and synthesized existing academic and popular literature on acid violence, including both refereed and non-refereed works, articles from popular magazines, from newspaper reports, publicly available reports from organizations such as the Acid Survivors Trust International and Acid Survivors Foundation. We also analyzed empirical findings from a nationwide survey of acid violence survivors in Bangladesh in the year 2013. A little bit of information about theoretical framework for this paper. We employ phenomenology as a conceptual anchor because we found it effective in providing insights into both the impact of acid violence upon the lives of survivors, as well as the motivations of perpetrators. We simultaneously employed the human capabilities approach, which has been espoused by very prominent development theorists such as Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum, to propose policy responses and support systems because it enabled us to emphasize not just the financial and the material needs of survivors, but also the importance of improving their position in society. So we show how engaging simultaneously with these two seemingly disparate theoretical frameworks, one, the phenomenology of power and disability, and two, human capabilities, will help move both the philosophical and the political discourse on acid violence forward, thereby enabling us to prevent future attacks and to frame more responsive policies to support survivors. Now, the global incidence of acid violence is growing rather than decreasing, but some countries are succeeding in reducing its incidence. In Bangladesh, for example, the numbers have dropped from 326 in the year 2004 to 44 in the year 2016. This suggests that a combination of enforcement of legislation and civil society vigilance does make a difference in decreasing the overall incidence of acid attacks. So Bangladesh's success in addressing this problem may represent a hopeful starting point for other countries contending with this issue. Having said that, we would like to say that governments and acid violence prevention NGOs have advocated for social, medical, and legal reforms that have assisted in improving the health, education and training, human rights, laws, and psychosocial services for survivors. But to date, none of them have developed programs that authentically acknowledge or address the root cause of acid violence, which is toxic masculinity. The desire to permanently victimize someone while demonstrating one's own power and brutality is almost always the underlying cause of acid violence, and this is true regardless of whether the victim is a man, a woman, or a transgendered person. None of the policies and interventions that are aimed at responding to acid violence have engaged meaningfully with this fact. So proactive prevention strategies must involve sensitizing boys and men to the effects of gender-based violence, including acid attacks, and incorporating them into prevention activities. And such proactive approaches should be prioritized, or they should at least be simultaneously implemented as reactive strategies such as policing acid sellers and purchasers, seeking harsher sentences for perpetrators, which countries like the UK, Bangladesh, and India are currently pursuing. Thank you very much for listening. Aisha and I hope you'll enjoy reading this paper, and we really welcome constructive feedback on this research.